Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Friday, the 15th of March, comes to you from London. And the market's mostly rising. Brexit votes still all over the place in the UK Parliament, and very tragically, a shooting in New Zealand last night. So our hearts go out to everyone there and in the region. It's a really hard thing to hear, and we see the markets are pretty much taking global events in their stride. We see the dollar is still bearish on that short-term chart, but the medium and long-term picture hasn't changed very much. Euro flattening out a bit today, but still bullish in the short term. The Japanese yen, we're seeing the dollar holding its gain here, so that does tend to tell us that the dollar will probably recover on the other short-term charts. Sterling sitting at 132. As I say, the political picture changing all the time, and the next 2 weeks we're likely to see quite a lot of volatility in sterling as the uncertainty takes us to the wire. And we look at sterling against the euro, still bullish on all three time frames. Against the Swiss franc, also just holding on to bullish, and against the Aussie dollar, we're also seeing that rise. Bitcoin little changed, so not much news there. The S&P 500 index also little changed, but still bullish. So that recovery continues, holding on to the gains without really seeing a major sell-off. The same with the Nasdaq. So the sentiment is pretty strong, and the Dow still has a little bit of work to do to get into bullish territory, as does the Russell 2000 index. The Dow has mostly been dragged down by Boeing this week. With the 737 crash and subsequent banning of flights pretty well globally now. Looking at the Russell 2000, we've still got work to do just to get back. A move above this rally top would be significant. We're seeing the future up this morning 0.2%, the Nasdaq E-mini up 0.4%. Does suggest we're going to see an up week. On the weekly chart on the future, we see we had a down week last week, the only down week we've had this year, and we've got quite a strong up week. That's like a bullish engulfing pattern. So we're seeing bullishness returning. Looking at the FTSE 100, that's the future. Looking at the FTSE cash, we're up 0.5% in the UK this morning. So the market pretty well liking the fact that no deal is looking more likely, as it's been voted against by MPs. And we're seeing the FTSE 250 also looking pretty strong there as well. The DAX is very little change this morning, just really sitting sideways this week, and we're seeing that in the candle, quite small candle week. So this is not a bullish engulfing. If anything, this is a little bit bearish engulfing, but obviously Europe's going to follow pretty much what the US does. CAC Quarante is looking stronger, still the strongest looking market in Europe. Japan down slightly. It's just struggling to get into bullish territory in the short term, but medium term it is wandering out of the clouds, so that is looking better. And the Hang Seng is up 0.5% and looking strong. And China up another 1%. So we're really the 4% fall we saw last Friday. We've recovered quite a bit of that. We see last week's weekly candle there. That was nearly all Friday. This week. But we have fallen away from the top, and that is just giving us a little bit of this double top pattern. So China might well run out of steam. If we can move to a new high, we would activate these targets. That would be significant. So just need to watch China for that. The Indian market powering ahead, up 1%, looking really strong, and a massively strong week here. So India looking very strong indeed. And the Australian market also looking pretty strong, although it's down slightly. Brent crude up 0.5% this morning. Its rise continues. It's bullish on all three time frames, and we're really now clearly bullish on the medium-term chart. WTI also bullish. I mentioned yesterday we got a target on Brent of $70.60. We've got a new target not yet activated of $70.39. So it does suggest that that $70 mark is going to be broken, and it's the seasonal time of year for strength in crude, so we shouldn't be surprised to see that. We've got upside targets of $60 and $62 for WTI. Taking a look at US nat gas, we're looking Stronger here at $2.85, but medium and long term still bearish. Gold back above the $1,300 mark, so that's just holding on to the bullish trend. We came back and tested that, but we are still bullish here on the lagging line above the cloud. We really just are short of short-term upside targets. We haven't seen a lot of buying thrusts off these this rally, so it's a relatively weak rise, but we are still seeing the picture as predominantly bullish on the upside here with big activated targets. Silver also holding on to its bull trend just back into the cloud, but not looking quite as good as gold. US 10-year yields sitting at 2.62%, so still in the doldrums, still bearish. It will be interesting to see whether we fall through this level on the lagging line. We are seeing downside targets to 250, 247. We've got 1 to 222, we've got 1 to 166, but we'd need to make new lows below that January level. So that will be the key. Can we hold that level for the US bond yield? 10-year, that was the 10-year yields. Looking at the German Bund future, we see last week's ECB move. We've been flat ever since, so German bonds just still in the doldrums. That data all coming from Thomson Reuters Icon, or if you're a Metastock Zenith user from Metastock. If we take a look at the individual stocks, here I tend to use Yahoo Finance, so this is my weekly, my daily, and my daily chart and my relative chart. And you can grab these layouts from our libraries. Just go to desktops and pull in the layouts. So quite straightforward there. So if we look at the world indices, we see that the Nasdaq was up, the rest of the US was slightly down, Europe up, Asia mostly up. We see here in Asia mostly up, so quite key there. And if we take a look at the poor old New Zealand, just looking at their market actually looking pretty good, but terrible time for them there today. Taking a look at the US market, first of all, we see Visa was the best performer in the Dow, up 1.13%, making new all-time highs. And of course, as technical analysts, we love new all-time highs, so that's looking pretty good. So that's just looking at the Dow Jones index there. Taking a look at the Nasdaq. In fact, let's have a quick look at Boeing. Always relatively easy to find, and they start with the, so it's the Boeing company. They were down 1% yesterday. So obviously this is going to be a pretty bad week for the share price. The key thing is, can they recover from here? That will be the one to watch. Looking at the Nasdaq. The big sort of movers here, we saw that Alphabet was down 0.2%. Apple was actually up over 1%. That recovery is starting to look more and more convincing, and Facebook was down 1.8%, but the chart's still looking pretty good there. Taking a look, really they've taken the fact that the site was down pretty much in their stride. Taking a look at the downside in the Dow, we can see here we had Facebook was certainly fifth worst. We still have some Take-Two Interactive Software. They were down yesterday and they're down again today. They're starting to crack on their long-term trend there. Taking a look here at at Sierra Resources, we see basically we've got the Aussie market here. Emeco Holdings were the best performer. On the downside, it was Sierra Resources, still down 6%. So they've really been a faller there. And the Chinese market, that's looking pretty good as well. We've got 6% upside on Waiho Chemical Group. And if we take a look at the worst performer, only a handful of stocks falling there. In India, this is where the real performance is at the moment. We're seeing really big moves in India. Kota Bank up 4.9%, 5%, breaking out of that pattern, looking really good. Got upside target of 8%, 10%. The relative isn't as strong, but is still looking good. Here we see the live prices coming in from Yahoo. Power Grid were next. Tata, we're also looking good. More banks here. ICIC, State Bank of India. ICIC making, look at that chart, just amazing, making new all-time highs. State Bank of India also making new all-time highs, looking really strong. And we still do have some downside. Yes Bank, their recovery is looking okay, but they've fallen back 1.3%. Looking in Europe, the best performers in the FTSE, we got TUI up 2.25%. Not enough to change this gloomy picture on this chart. Here we see the relative performance, so quite scary. Hilke Pharmaceuticals up 2%. So again, that is up, but the chart still quite mixed. Taking a look at the downside, remembering the FTSE is up, so we don't have that many stocks right down. We've got Coca-Cola down 0.4%, Rightmove, probably stock's been pretty badly hit, but Rightmove actually bucking the trend here and looking pretty good. In the FTSE 250, we've got the restaurant group up 12%, so that's a little bit of a turnaround for them, but that hasn't really changed the picture on the chart. It's just terrible, and still downside targets hanging over us. So that 12% is of little consolation for shareholders there. And if we look at the other end, we've got Bakkavor Group down 7%, Funding Circle down 3.65%, Apex Global, Alpha and Greencore down 2.3%. So we still are seeing some quite big performances to the downside. Last of all, looking in Europe, this is the Euro Stock 600. L'Oreal was one we talked about yesterday. Best performer again today. The best stocks keep tending to do best, and this is an amazing chart. Still got 19% upside targets here on the chart, so looking pretty good. MSL in Amsterdam just pulling back, but still a second best performer. Here the live prices coming in from Yahoo again. Nokia there, and if we look at the other end, we've got Volkswagen being slammed in the US for the emissions scandal on the diesel, and so we're seeing Volkswagen being an underperformer. Adidas also just struggling again this morning. A lot of the German stocks here, you can see the .de after them, so German stocks falling away a bit. That's it for today. Until Monday, happy charting. See you then.